Welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg of KCSA Strategic Communications speak with the CEOs, financial experts, cultural icons, legislators, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. Today, Louis and Ann are speaking with Justin Zaremba, the lead reporter for NJ Cannabis Insider for NJ Advanced Media. His work is seen throughout the state through sites like NJ.com and the Star Ledger. He is the cannabis reporter in New Jersey. Nothing happens in the state capital of Trenton without him knowing it. Don't sit back, lean forward, as this one is particularly well timed. Now on to our interview with reporter Justin Zaremba.
Annie?
I don't respond to that.
Would you rather me call you Anaho?
No.
I would never do that in public.
Well, no, because Annie is another colleague we have here,
That's
so
true.
I don't want to confuse anybody.
I don't think anybody's confusing the two of you. You're on the podcast and she's not.
She has been on the podcast.
She has been on the podcast. And she was really nervous the first time she did it. It was really funny.
She'll be back. So I'm super excited for this episode. I've been working with this reporter, I think since his publication NJ Cannabis Insider started. It's Justin Zaremba. It was his brainchild pretty much. Of understanding that cannabis was such a big issue in New Jersey, it deserved its very own trade publication. So it sits within the NJ.com and Advanced Media family. So if you're in New Jersey and you're reading like the Star Ledger or going to log on to NJ.com to see if your school is closed in the winter storm.
Or summer storm, it's like...
Or summer storm, who knows?
NCAA, no class at all.
Just so much sunshine out here in LA. So it's a great publication. It's a subscription service. So we are always advocating for people to pay for journalism. So I'm really looking forward to our talk with him today.
As am I, since both of us, if our dear listeners didn't know this, we are both native New Jerseyans through and through.
I got called out for my accent this weekend, which I really don't think I have one.
You don't have an accent.
For New Jersey.
You definitely don't.
I didn't think so either. But someone was like, "Are you from New York?" I'm like, "No."
And did you then?
Jersey, baby.
That's right. Jersey strong.
Yeah.
I went to Rutgers. Where'd you go?
University of Massachusetts for 2 years, and then I graduated from Monmouth University in New Jersey. Fly Hawks.
Oh, really? Fly Hawks. Okay.
Really? Scarlet Knights?
Yeah.
How'd you do in the NCAA tournament?
Oh, wait, we didn't make it. We haven't made it since 1991 when I was in school. So you can't zing me. I root for the Mets, I root for the Jets, and I root for Rutgers. I don't know how to root for a team that wins.
Aww.
It's okay. So I also am looking forward to this conversation. I have been trying to get coffee with Justin for almost a year. Maybe this will actually incentivize him to want to sit down and meet me face to face, or maybe not.
CBD infused coffee?
Not at the place that I want to take him, so no. But this is, the way to really get into what's going on in the inner workings of Trenton. I mean, he knows where the bodies are buried. And my favorite thing about Trenton is the sign that says, "Trenton makes and the world takes."
Trenton, the capital of New Jersey.
Yes.
Fun fact.
All right. Are we ready? Let's get on to the conversation with Justin.
Let's do it. So thanks for being here, Justin. We're so excited to talk with you today. I think it's really timely that we're having you on the pod right now. Can you walk our listeners through what the cannabis laws in New Jersey look like right at this moment on April 1st at 1 p.m. Pacific time?
And no April Fool's jokes here.
Yeah, definitely no April Fool's jokes. I mean, that was already played on folks last week when the vote got pulled from committee. But so to give everyone a background, New Jersey has been going through the process of a bill package that encompasses a medical marijuana expansion, an adult use program, and expungements. And it was looking like there might have been enough. There might have been enough votes to get there in the Senate, but they pulled it back because apparently they didn't. So that ended up getting walked back last week, and now we're currently waiting with bated breath to see what exactly is going to happen in Trenton, because as it stands right now, we have a very limited medical program in New Jersey, and by the report that came out today from the Department of Health's program, they indicated that New Jersey, as we expected, is woefully underserving its patients. It does not have the adequate supply to meet the demand that would be needed to meet even like the average needs of a consumer here or of a medical patient. So right now we have this bill packages that legislators are currently trying to hash out and figure out, but we can get into more specifics on that in a bit.
Well, we're going to get into it now. I mean, when Governor Murphy was elected, he ran on the first 100 days. He said, "I will sign a bill in the first 100 days," and we are a little bit past that right now.
Just to clarify that one bit, because that's something that we have debated about in the newsroom. He didn't, going back and actually trying to find evidence of him saying this, we haven't been able to do it. And I don't think anybody has. From everything that we've been able to recollect on that, it was Steve Sweeney who had said something about that, and Murphy kind of made a positive affirmation about that, and that's what everybody's tied that to. But regardless, they did end up tying themselves to that 100-day pledge, which Cuomo also did, which was another blunder. But those are sorts of unforced errors that people make.
Is Governor Murphy over his head? I mean, is this such a fraught issue that he just didn't realize where he was going to get resistance from? I mean, can you take us through the sausage making here?
Sure. I mean, when we look at the triumvirate that currently controls the New Jersey power structure, we have Governor Murphy in the executive branch, and then you have over the Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin and Senate President Steve Sweeney. And Sweeney, he is a longtime political player, and being in the Senate, he knows what the machinery is to get things done. He had a very good working relationship with Governor Christie, and Governor Christie, who was also well known to be able to get votes from across the aisle, also able to make deals and do arm twisting. Murphy has not really shown us to have that same sort of political backdealing, and especially not sort of he's been very much tried to distance himself from transactional politics. So there's definitely been some pushback, especially from folks in the industry, as to whether or not Murphy and Sweeney had been doing enough in the lead up to the vote. And by the way, to further complicate the matters, the relationship between Governor Murphy and Senate President Sweeney, as last year, they had a very tenuous working relationship, if that. There were times when they were reportedly not speaking. But since then, and as we saw when they ended up pulling the committee vote, nobody got thrown under the bus.
Yeah, they're really trying to keep it, to tamp down that kind of belief that they don't get along, right?
Well, most definitely, but they also had kind of a I've been calling it a kumbaya moment, just because nobody's looking to rock the boat, and actually it was Sweeney who ate a little bit of crow when he ended up saying I underestimated what was going to take to do this vote. They'd actually ended up complimenting each other, which is also another rarity. With Murphy supposedly getting out there and trying to drum up some votes, while Sweeney, from what we've heard, had been reluctant to use his political capital to necessarily get the votes he needed at that time, partly because the budget session is coming up very soon, and he's probably going to be using it for that. So it's a complex and dynamic situation, to be sure.
There were reports last week, and there was rumblings, and there was a lot of rumor that the reason why the bill collapsed at the last minute had to do with expungement and social equity, social justice. Can you talk about what you were hearing, and is that right?
Yes. So from everything we've heard and reported upon, it seems that the inclusion of language expanding on expungements to third-degree crimes, that became a real sticking point and made quite a few legislators uneasy.
What's a third-degree crime?
So to be clear, everybody beforehand had been kind of talking about just possession charges, just limiting it to possession charges, and people started getting a bit hinky and worried about when you expand it out to distribution. So the way that the New Jersey law is currently with regard to possession and distribution, the law sets under 50 grams of possession as a disorderly person's crime. Over 50 grams possession is a fourth-degree crime. Now, when you get to the distribution side, it's either distribution of under 1 ounce, and then the next, which is a fourth-degree crime, and then the next level up, which is a third-degree crime, is distribution of over 1 ounce to up to 5 pounds. Now, putting aside the issues that we have of using both the customary and the metric systems in comparables in related laws, it creates this really kind of weird overlap. It's a way for usually for prosecutors to do a plea bargain for some folks and probably not others. I don't want to suggest anything else there, but that is something that has been used in the past for certain sorts of defendants. That if you have, let's say, just clear that. So 50 grams is over an ounce. It's about 1.8 ounces there. So if somebody had about 1.5 ounces, well, and let's say that they were actually selling it, well, if they were making a deal with a prosecutor, then they might only end up charged with the fourth degree criminal offense. So what made all the legislators very, very nervous, though, was that 5 pound language, because that's just the way that the law is. If you're looking to encompass folks that served in that middle area, that 5 pound language really concerned them. But it's good to emphasize the fact that the only expungements that would be issued would be specifically for related to cannabis. So usually, if somebody was like a serious narco, let's say they were, for example, used violence in the crime, or also had guns, illegal weapons involved, none of those charges would be expunged. Just through the application process.
So wait, I just let me get this clear. I am in South Orange. I was at Seton Hall, and I was a big distributor, and I was distributing 5 pounds a week, right? And I had a gun. So the gun crime wouldn't be expunged, but the distribution crime would be expunged. Is that how it works?
Conceivably, if you went through the process, there's quite a few boxes you'd have to check off. If you'd have to be if there's like a certain amount of time that had elapsed since you'd been convicted of the crime or served your time. That's part of the complicated process that is going to be the expungement process in New Jersey. They're trying to do a few things in this. Besides the social justice elements, it's also going to force a modernization of the court keeping systems that we have and the law enforcement systems, because just generally a lot of this is going to have to. A lot of various departments are going to end up having to go to digital in order to be able to accommodate some of these processes.
In addition to some of the expungement issues, your colleague at NJ Cannabis Insider, Peyton Guyon, reported that there may have been a generational gap here with some of the legislators, and that Murphy really wasn't given enough time to whip the votes and really educate those who may either have been reticent or have misconceptions about what this would mean. Do you think if given more time, this would have worked if they weren't kind of painted into a corner here?
I think if Head Murphy and Sweeney started working about a week before they started really dialing up efforts, that could have done it. But to speak to the generational side, that's something that we've known for quite some time. There are certain legislators that are never going to get on board with this, despite being Democrats. In particular, Ron Rice and Dick Cody.
I just don't get it. I mean, Ron Rice lives in a community that has been so negatively impacted by this. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I in some ways I can understand where he's coming from. He's former law enforcement himself, and he lived and worked in Newark during the rough and tumble 70s, and when it was quite a vicious place, and a lot of drugs were being pumped into the inner cities at that point, especially during the era of the Vietnam War. So I can see why he has a definite suspicion about some of this, but the extent of trying to proclaim that the sky is going to be falling just really doesn't bear any water from what we've seen in other comparable marketplaces.
The issue of social equity is one that is also important here. Making sure that the communities that have been most negatively impacted by the war on drugs have access to capital. Can you talk about the legislation as it stands, as it addresses this? Does it go far enough? Does it not go far enough?
I mean, the way that New Jersey's current licensing system is, there, quite a few advocates have expressed concerns about the is it being set up in a way that's more advantageous to folks with big checkbooks and greater access to capital. I mean,
you mean people who live in my town?
Yes, people who live in your town, or people, honestly, former Wall Street people. One of the things that we've seen, and one of the frequent criticisms of the cannabis industry, is the number of ex-Wall Street folks that have flocked there. People who have access to a lot of capital and may only be paying lip service to the social justice aspects of it. So there's concern, especially if you look at New Jersey. New Jersey's current system is overwhelmingly white. Even the current ATC operators and the recent licensees, overwhelmingly, we have a disproportionate number of folks who have the pale complexion that I have.
And ATC
I haven't met you yet. I don't know how pale you actually are.
I'm extremely white, so.
Glad we cleared all that up. So ATC is just for people who aren't so savvy to the New Jersey market. Those are called alternative care centers, right? And that's the
alternative treatment centers.
Treatment centers. Okay, so that's the what we basically called a medical dispensary for the state of New Jersey, right? Okay.
Right, and in New Jersey, as they are right now, they're all vertically integrated, which has been another frequent criticism, just because the way that New Jersey's current medical program is we have only 6 nonprofit ATCs open at this point. But last year, at the end of last year, they ended up awarding licensing to an additional 6 licensees, all of whom are multi-state operators. They're either operating in several states in the U.S. or associated territories of the U.S., and one of whom is actually now a multinational because it operates both in Canada and in the U.S. That's TerraSend, which has the majority ownership of NIDA.
Full disclosure, some of those guys are our clients. And the nonprofit status is a weird thing too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's part of so when the Compassionate Use of Medical Marijuana Act was passed back in 2007, one of the requirements for that was that the dispensaries would have to maintain a nonprofit status, which has constrained them and their ability to grow to scale, to have access to capital. So it's which has ended up underserving patients. I mean, for the longest time, we only had about five of the 6 potential dispensaries operating. It took quite a while for Harmony over in Secaucus to get online.
Have you visited all 6?
I have not been to all 6. I've been to about 4 of them.
So I am a patient in New Jersey, and I'm associated with the one in Montclair. I can't get it. Yeah, I can't get an appointment. It is the most absurd.
You can't just walk in. You have to get an appointment.
You have to have an intake appointment to start as a patient, and you know, I definitely have anxiety and I have chronic pain and would like to be able to take advantage of this. And it really drives me absolutely nuts that you can't just walk in like you can in other states. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
One of the frequent criticisms that we've received with respect to the current medical program is either the supply issues that folks end up having to deal with, or the lack of, basically just the general problems when it comes to the lack of patient access. And that's actually one of the things that came out in today's report on the medical marijuana program in New Jersey, is that the state is aware that it is not serving patients as well as it should be, and has actually called for a quadrupling of the number of licensees, both for more retailers than cultivators, but providing a decent amount, looking to provide a decent amount of cultivators in there in order to meet that patient demand. Because one of the things that when you look at some of these ATCs is that they're limited to only a couple strains, because they will have them for a little bit, then they will sell out, and then it takes time for harvest to come back. And that is a huge challenge for patients who have epilepsy or chronic conditions that need medication in order to manage it.
And that report, we'll put a link into the show notes, but it was just released by the state health department. And it said that I think they needed at least 18 more growers and 44 more retailers to keep up the pace with patient access.
Which is also an absurdly low number on both sides. I mean, if you go to Colorado or you go to Washington or any other state that have real historic, robust programs, that's still an unbelievably low number, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But that's kind of the hallmark for what New Jersey has been with respect to cannabis. It's been, compared to the West Coast, it's far more conservative, a lot, and far tighter regulation. I mean, that they have, from the get-go. I mean, when you just take a step back and look at what it is the state is trying to do. So they're going through the process of trying to legalize a substance that's been historically prohibited for decades. And then they're looking to create a highly regulated industry from the get-go, and trying to try to think out in the statute all the regulations that might be required, and then at the same time looking to create an expungement process for removing the stain on people's criminal records. And guess what? That's going to require a complete overhaul of our law enforcement record and court record system. I mean, it's a really ambitious goal. So a lot of folks are pretty, definitely have raised an eyebrow of, are we trying to do too much too soon?
Well, we're both native New Jerseyans, and we've talked about that a lot before on the podcast, so that won't surprise anyone. But I live in LA, where, in a state that we just did this already, and it's for sure far from perfect. But we are in an active, quote, cannabis commerce out here, and the attitude is so different towards cannabis that when I visit New Jersey or New York or just really anywhere on the East Coast, I still get people kind of snickering that I'm in the business and not really taking it seriously, and pointing and laughing, which, sure, that's fine. But
it has nothing to do with you being in the
maybe
business.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just taking it the wrong way. But, as a reporter, you're out, talking to, I assume, not just legislators, but actual, people in the community. Do you get that as well?
There's a definite sense of frustration from when I talk to folks, when I go to conventions and shows, and saying, all right, when's this going to happen in New Jersey? When's it going to happen? Because everybody, one of the views is that when one of the big East Coast states, whether it's New Jersey or New York goes, that's the East Coast. It's going to create a domino effect for its neighbors.
Everyone just knocked on wood.
Because of the extent of the discussions that New Jersey has had and New York hasn't. That's why whenever people are like, "Oh, New York's going to be first," no, Pennsylvania is going to end up getting there. Well, they really haven't had the same amount of groundwork or discussions or negotiations that folks in New Jersey have been doing for basically over a 2-year process right now. So we've got a bit of a lead time with respect to that. But that's not to say that New Jersey couldn't screw it up if it really wanted to.
Oh, we're screwing it up. Trust me. I mean, it's like it is. So you were on that trip to Nevada. Was it last year or the year before, when the legislators all flew from New Jersey to see how Nevada was able to transform their medical program into an adult use program? Did our guys not take notes?
They did, but and there were quite a few. The problem is there is so much that really is out there, and the certain systems that would work in Nevada wouldn't necessarily work out in New Jersey, or were not embraced. I know one of the things that's been embraced in other states, and especially in the West Coast, but hasn't been embraced in New Jersey, is home grow. A lot of patients have been pushing for that because it would solve one of those problems of patient access, but at least for certain folks, of all right, they're able to grow their own cannabis, but then the state comes in with concerns because, well, how are they going to regulate it? How are they going to become the garden police? But really, I think it's one of my suspicions is lost tax revenue as a result. Also, when you end up freeing up home grow, then you create there is a gray market that ends up occurring, because when possession becomes legal, it is then legal to transfer your possession in the form of a gift. And what this ends up leading to is usually thinly veiled contemporaneous transactions. So buying an overpriced vape or an overpriced T-shirt and getting an eighth of bud at the same time.
I still don't. I still think that the no home grow in both New York and New Jersey was. I don't know if it was lobbied for, but the bigger cannabis companies were not necessarily in favor of home grow as much as they could have been. How did that get put into the actual text? I mean, somebody gave them that language or lobbied on that issue. I mean, how did that? Because you would think that from a social justice and social equity perspective, providing access to people who want to grow it at home so that they don't have to pay, especially in a state like New Jersey, higher than black market prices for product, that they would be in favor of it. But somebody snuck it in there.
Well, it's not that they stuck it in; they just didn't. They just left it out because there's just no inclusion of saying, "Oh, we're going to allow for home grow." And there are there are quite a few interests that benefit from this because, again, that comes down to restricting access. Unfortunately, patients don't necessarily have and can't afford powerful Trenton lobbyists to help get their point of view across to legislators. But larger multi-state operators and the current ETCs they certainly could make their voices aware of that.
What's the restriction for delivery in the state? Because if you're saying that people can't have home grow and there's the access is lopsided in terms of there's 6 dispensaries now, 6 to open up soon, to service this community that is so underserved.
Soonish. Nobody's put a shovel in the ground yet.
Fair enough. I mean, how do you is delivery even an option there? I haven't done any research on it, so I'm kind of just lobbing that in at you. Sorry about that.
In one of the that is something that they have taken into consideration. So under the proposed licensing structure, that there are about 4 classes of license for like the primary, like involved in the leaf touching transaction side, but also so it'll be cultivation, wholesaling, which from all intents, from everything that I understand, was lobbied for by the liquor industry because they happen to know wholesaling quite a bit. Then processing, manufacturing, retail, and then you have another one for lab testing. But under retail, they're looking to provide basically an ability for delivery and transportation of cannabis. So providing that ability. Now, whether that encompasses, I'm sure that Ease had done quite a bit of lobbying on that because they were one of the biggest groups to lobby over the past year in New Jersey with respect to cannabis lobbying. But there's been a lot of talk about trying to get delivery because the way that our current program is that it is still very difficult for patients, especially those who have severe and intractable diseases, to get access. It might take over an hour or more for them to be able to get to drive to one of the dispensaries or to have their caregiver get to one of those dispensaries. So, making somebody who's got some debilitating conditions have to go and go through that rigmarole on a frequent basis, whether monthly or more, does not ease the restrictions that you could have from their local pharmacy, having delivery service to them. So there has been in the last iteration of the bill that I saw, they had delivery in there. So we'll see where it goes when this comes back around again in May.
From this conversation that we're having, you sound almost like an advocate. Has your opinion about the plant and the industry changed, or how has your opinion about the plant and the industry changed as you've reported on it almost exclusively?
I mean, I've seen I've seen quite a few people who have, and I've met quite a few people as a result of it who have been impacted, and had their lives, whether negatively or positively, but by this particular plant. I mean, if we're to be actually objective about it, then we have to look at it historically too. And the fact of the matter is that this plant has been a part of human society for thousands of years. If you looking at anthropological data, there have been shown hemp cultivation sites at early human settlements. So it's been used, and from what we see in a variety of different writings, it's been used as a medicine up to 5,000 years ago in China. Its medicinal benefits were known, and nowadays everybody's so blown away by this rediscovery of, oh, look at all these things that we can use it for. Well, we've already know it, but it was just something that we forgot about because that's what the propaganda of the war on drugs really did. I mean, a lot of that can be credited to especially the anti-Mexican sentiment back in the 1930s that really started the criminalization of cannabis.
To continue on this, so how did you get into this business then? So I guess talk to us a little bit about your cannabis journey. You've got a law degree, right? So how did you? What happened?
I'll tell you. The story is that I was at a crossroads myself. I had just gotten my law degree. I didn't know whether I wanted to stay and report and continue being a reporter, or to spin off and go into law. And I ended up getting a new boss, a new news director coming in, and he did a chat with everybody, saying, "What is something that we should be covering that we're not covering?" And this was on the heels of Murphy becoming the governor, getting elected, but he hadn't yet been inaugurated. And I just blurted out the first thing that came into my mind because I just said, "Oh, screw it, just be honest." And it was, we should be covering the cannabis.
And so you were a full-fledged reporter at that time, though, for NJ.com.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I've been a reporter for has it been about 10 years now?
Okay, so you went to law school while you were reporting full time.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, got it. And so what was
and having a family too.
Oh, so you've been a little busy. Well, so what was your editor's response to that, or your publisher's response?
Well, the news director's response was he raised an eyebrow. He was obviously interested, and he wrote it down on his whiteboard. And then a few days later, hey, we want you to helm up this new project. And we that's when our conversations began to happen and take formation as to what would end up becoming NJ Cannabis Insider. Because that, even from the very beginning, it was a question of, what do we want this to be? Weed? Do we want it to be marijuana? And my view then, as it is now, is that we should refer to it in the name of the plant, because weed is slang. Weed is also, and it is long-time slang, but is very, very known, very, very utilized. Marijuana is, it is also slang. It's a pejorative in some ways because it's Mary Jane. It gets back to a lot of those anti-Mexican sentiment that was really fostered decades earlier when drumming up this fever pitch against cannabis, and specifically the people who use cannabis, who typically tend to be darker, or at least that's what it was led. A lot of folks were led to believe. As we know now, usage rates are about comparable between different groups.
And so you started NJ Cannabis Insider, which is awesome, and everyone should subscribe and actually pay for journalism. And we'll have a link.
It is a way to support reporters, yes.
Absolutely.
And actually get good quality journalism.
Yeah, and it allows you guys to really concentrate on one really important topic and really dive deep, which I appreciate. So, but you've also branched off into a couple of events. So, do you want to tell us about some of the live events you have coming up?
Sure, absolutely. Well, our first event was back in October, and we did at that one, Senator Nick Scutari ended up being the keynote, and we're actually doing another event in a few days, actually on April 3rd, and we have Hadley Ford, the CEO of Ianthus, will be there as our keynote, but we also have a real quite an amazing breadth of power players who will be in attendance. Senator Scutari will be on a panel, as will a veteran Democratic lobbyist, Brendan Gill, as will Bill Pascrell III with Princeton Public Affairs Group. Bill Caruso, a well-known person in the cannabis space with Archer Public Affairs. As well as the New Jersey Cannabis Industry Association and the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. So two different trade groups in the New Jersey cannabis space. Again, we're gonna have representation from both of them on our panels. And it's honestly one of the things I really love doing about these events is I look at it as not an opportunity so much to do a panel discussion that can maybe bore people to tears, but a way to have a bunch of people have an engaging conversation with an audience and really get to explore questions that folks may not have fully articulated yet.
As a journalist, you're selling stories the same way that Ann and I, as PR people, sell stories. You sell them to your editors. Have they negged or have spiked a story of yours that you went to them, you just got it wrong? This was a story and you guys missed it.
I have never, in doing NJ Cannabis Insider, I've never had a story spiked. I've never had anything like that. We have a very good trust relationship, and we on both sides of the relationship, we really trust each other's news sense. So we haven't had anything like that, and we're typically right ahead of the breaking news wave, or just there as it's happening.
Do you have your other colleagues kind of looking at you and because it's covered in the business columns as well. So are they coming to you kind of, checking their facts and making sure they have everything right? Have you become the resident cannabis expert?
I'm one of them, because that's also my colleague Peyton's beat as well. My 100% beat is devoted to our trade magazine, the NJ Cannabis Insider, but Peyton is also he's the reporter for our general audience in the Ledger as well. So both of us frequently get emailed by a lot of the same people at trying to get all the info that we can that we can provide to them on issues that they may be facing, and a lot of it comes down to like some of the info that we have on NJ Cannabis Insider, like our map that shows where various municipalities stand with respect to cannabis legalization, as well as our legislative vote tracker.
Oh my God, I use that all the time. I'm just always going to it.
Let's be handicappers for a second. Imagine we're at the Meadowlands watching the trotters.
There's going to be like 7 people who understand what that is, but that's okay.
That's okay. They're all from New Jersey. So we're at the racetrack, and you've got your betting form in hand. Are you betting that this gets done? That we get adult use legislation done this legislative session, or are we waiting another year?
Well, so I think that they could get it done by May if depending upon what they're able to do. One of the challenges is that every deadline that the government has set for itself, it's blown through. But each time it's been, it's scooched forward a tick closer. So if it could be in May, but if it's not, then it's going to get pushed until probably November in the lame duck session. But even if it gets through in May, it's not all right. Turn on the faucet and cannabis is pouring out to everyone in New Jersey. I mean, there's going to be time before the law goes into effect, and then there's going to be another about an 18-month lag time from that point until new licensees will end up being able to vertically integrate and really be a threat to the current operators who already have licensing. So there's a year and a half sort of.
So that was process. That was process. If you're placing a bet right now, are you betting this gets done or no?
I'm betting that it gets done. I'm not saying when it's going to get done, but New Jersey's going to. I suspect it's and based on everything that I've seen and all the folks that I've talked to, there is real movement forward on this, and it is just a matter of when.
Are there going to be any Republicans that vote for this that are going to surprise us?
That are going to surprise you? I don't know if they're going to surprise you, but I mean, Declan O'Scanlan he clarified his position recently on the Senate Republicans page because he could very easily be convinced to vote, but they have to do a few things to his satisfaction, and not unreasonable things like making sure that the revenue generated is going into particular parts of the budget. But some of that comes down to budgetary issues that folks will be hashing out. There are other Republicans who might be convinced to come on board. A lot of folks have looked.
Any chance that Tom Kane? What about Tom Kane? Can we get him?
Tom Kane Jr. I don't know about that one. I do know that that during the walk to Washington, he was at an event, and he was being lobbied by at least a couple different cannabis lobbyists while there. I don't know whether he himself will go out to bat, but I don't think he'll stand in the way of other Republicans looking to do so.
I've spoken to him directly about this. He's a tough nut to crack, man. He is not. He is not one who. I don't understand especially in an urban and suburban state like ours, where the impact of the war on drugs has been so dramatic. How people can be so intransigent about this. It's. I just don't get it.
What is his specific hangup?
You're going to have to ask him that. I can't go. I'm not going to delve into the mind of Tom Kane Jr.
I mean, a lot of it, the way, we did a Reddit, Peyton and I both did a Reddit AMA last week after the vote that wasn't. And, in my mind, there were a few factors that really scuttled the vote. Is that generational divide we spoke of, just older legislators who they're not going to be swayed. You can't, if you've ever tried to convince your grandpa of something that was one way and he thought it was another, well, good luck to you trying to change his mind. But the other one is there are folks in tough re-election areas. It might be evenly divided. So despite the fact that there's, from what we've seen in the polling, there's a general broad, majority in favor of legalization in New Jersey, and some of these evenly divided red-blue districts, well, that's where you have legislators definitely, sitting on the fence and waiting to see, what they can get out of their vote, with respect to deals with the legislative leadership.
Okay. We have taken a lot of your time, but we have one more question. Right? You're a member of the media, and what we normally ask a member of the media is, what is the most underreported story that is going on in cannabis? That's what we ask our other guests. But since you are the guy who is writing all of this stuff, is there a story that you haven't done yet that you're dying to sink your teeth into? What is the story that we'll see coming up in the next couple of weeks or months from you that you're just going to be really meaty?
For me, I would say I would love to, more being done about medical research into cannabis. It is one of the things that we keep seeing from various studies coming out there is that there's a heck of a lot that we don't know, just because the federal prohibition on cannabis has limited researchers' ability to actually investigate this. And there are a variety of different operators out there who have been doing research, but haven't necessarily had the same sorts of press really playing up to it. We've seen, there are certain cannabinoids that appear to have the ability to impact tumor cell growth, limiting it or restricting it. There are other aspects that have been shown to have the effects on inflammation. So seeing that sort of actual hard science investigation into it is something I would love to see, because there's, especially right now, as regulation is just kind of quite nebulous and still forming, you have a lot of hokum, flim-flam, and snake oil out there, especially when it comes to stuff like CBD. So getting those stories of hard science of what cannabis can do and what it can't do, I think is something that is really needed in the space.
Justin,
Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll put links into the show notes, but can you tell our listeners where they can find you? Website, Twitter, email, whatever you want to plug.
Favorite coffee store?
You can find me online at NJ Cannabis Insider.biz. I'm also available on Twitter at Justin Zaremba, NJ. And you're able to get access to my email through either one of those, and I'm reachable to make myself as reachable as possible to the public.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our thanks again to Justin Zaremba, the editor of New Jersey Cannabis Insider. Check them out at njcannabisinsider.nj.com. And if you don't subscribe to it, you really should. We all have to pay for good journalism. You can also check out Justin on Twitter at Justin Zaremba NJ. To chat with us, you can email us at greenrush@kcsa.com, or you can find us on Twitter at _greenrush, and on it, forget it. Just find us on Instagram. It's not a problem. We're at the greenrush_podcast. That is one take, Shay. One take.
Cannabis.